On this episode, we sit down with Keith Davis Young. Now, Keith is a local artist and designer, and today we discuss his collaboration with brands such as Willie Nelson, St. Elmo Brewing Company, Independence Brewing, among many others. We dive into some of his current projects and discuss the many ways Keith challenges himself in his quest for inspiration. Also, Mark graces us with his take on the similarities and differences between art and architecture. If you like this episode, please subscribe, share with a friend, and give us a 5-star rating. Thanks for listening. Welcome to this episode of In the House. Today we are speaking with Keith Young. Keith is an artist and a freelance designer. He has worked with local and nationwide brands such as Willie Nelson, Target, St. Elmo Brewing Company, Lone Star Beer, Independence Brewing Company, just to name a few. Keith, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
I'm excited to have you on.
Yeah, me too.
So I want to jump right in. I'm really interested in hearing your story, your background, and so give us your background and kind of your history, and describe in your own words what it is that you do.
Yeah, well, kind of like I was telling you guys, I mean, I grew up about 2 hours away from here, so I had always kind of come up to Austin and recognized sort of like the magic that it kind of held and what was the draw and having almost like an energy about it. I remember going to the Drag and just buying records back when you would still see, used record shops there, and as a kid, like, just being in a bunch of bands, like that was, Austin's had that kind of magic. And a lot of, at the time, there was a lot of design and artistic types that I just felt like I identified with. And this is coming from like a very young state of mind, driving up from Bryan College Station, which is my hometown, which is just like a very small Texas town. Like I was telling you guys, it's a town you'd see in like No Country for Old Men. Like it straight up takes you like 50 years back, and which is like charming in its own way too. If you like small towns, like I think when I was younger, I didn't appreciate it as much, and now as I'm older, I'm like, dang, I had it pretty good. I could just like skateboard and draw in my room and play drums in the garage, and
no pressure
at all. Yeah, it was really nice. I almost like, it's funny as you get older, it's almost like I think some people like myself like maybe gravitate towards a more simple regimen in life, or just more just tightening the circle, and then just kind of like, what do I actually want to do? How do I actually want to curate my day to day? You know what I mean? And so I actually go back there. All my family's still there. I'll go back there and visit them. But grew up there. I didn't go to A&M, the university there, but I had gone to Baylor actually after considering like North Texas and Texas. I had a lot of family went there, but then I just wanted a more private experience, and I went through Waco, Texas, and the only thing I really knew about that was like kind of David Koresh and all that mess. So I was like, okay,
sign me up.
Yeah, sign me up. Yeah. Let's join a cult. No, I just kind of.
I went there. Which dorm did you live in?
Oh, I was in Martin dorm. Yeah. And it's so funny because there's a lot of Austinites that I meet that when I left there, I was like, when I get out of here, I'm not moving to DFW like everybody else. I immediately like when I graduated, which was in 2005. It makes me kind of a dinosaur a little bit, but I'm like, I had moved here. Let's see, around 2006, 2007. And then the first job I had was literally down the road, like I was telling you guys. It was in advertising. And at that age, I was jumping out of out of school, not really understanding like any of us, kind of like the way the corporate world works, and I wasn't able to really decipher working for an ad agency compared to trying to work for a design job. I mean, this is back in the day when I was like printing off like MapQuest, like my next interview's here, and I'm shuffling through papers and interviewing at 20 places while living on my buddy's couch in Barton Springs. It was really a unique time, and it was still exciting. I'm even not knowing where I was going to be, but I ended up working there as like a junior art director. So I learned process there really early on. And then I also knew that I didn't want to, not to knock advertising, but it was like, there was a different kind of dynamic going on there. One was, I feel like advertising has so much of this sort of message forward selling factor. And then design has so much more of this rooted in like, well, let's really kind of weigh in all these other components of art. And, and it kind of goes outside of just strong concept. There's all these other factors that influence the medium. And so I really realized, I was like, I really want to be a commercial designer. Like, I feel like this is a good medium between what I want to do. And, like Mark, you were asking about kind of like the photo taking. Like, I started really taking a lot more photography, which is what you find on my current website. And a lot of people ask me that. They're always like, why do you have all this like 35 millimeter work and not the design work? And I don't know, I was kind of wanting at the time to just, I didn't want to show, like a bunch of like direct mail ads and a bunch of like, whether like I didn't want that work to, like one of my good friends, who's also a studio mate at one time, Ryan Rhodes, he's part of this design duo called Land, and he had told me like, show the work you want to do, and it was always like the most, like, it's such a simple ethos, but it always rang true to me. And so I was like, okay, well, I'm not going to show this work that I've been doing, through in college and at this ad agency. And so, there's a really funny story of how I actually got fired from that job, or I got let go because they were a sister.
Idiots.
Well, I'll tell you what happened.
Absolute
this is a really
idiots.
amazing story. So you'll remember this time. It was, and I hope I don't get in trouble telling the story, but it's really fascinating. But it's like, they're a sister agency of McCann Erickson in New York. And so they would just like kind of like delegate all their clients. Well, like they had like acquired like Army as a client, and like any agency, they're like throwing work orders on all the art directors' desks. Like, here's your job for today. And one of them was like recruitment posters for like 15 to 17-year-olds for the Army. And I was like, man, I feel really weird about this. Like, I feel like you know what I mean? I have like unsettled, like I don't want to be responsible. Yeah, totally. Yeah. And it really like went against. I just didn't feel right, and so I fought it. And they were like, well, no, you have to do it. And I was like, well, I'm not going to do it. And they're like, well, then you need to go talk to the creative director. And I was like, well, send me in there. Send me into Dave's office. And I went in there, and they just like, yeah. And it was during a recession, after that second Bush administration or something. And
but you stood your ground.
I stood my ground, and like I even look at it now, and I'm just like so glad that I did. Like I stuck to my roots and who I actually am, because I can't imagine even putting that out into the world and thinking that even, I don't know. It really haunted me in that moment, and I just knew my true self and what I had to do, and it prompted me to like jump into this like just super poor Keith mode. Like, I mean, I was living off P. Terry's and ramen and PB&J. I was living behind like Uchi on South Lamar, and I was like, I remember with this fat bulldog that I had named Moose. I bought him from a retired bull rider. He was like my sidekick. So me and Moose just like living downstairs in this creepy old apartment for next to nothing, and screen printing out of the bathroom, just like doing whatever I can. I was doing a ton of stuff for musicians. I immediately pivoted into doing work for South by Southwest.
Nice.
And a friend of mine, it was really incredible.
You're all about that.
And as a musician, it was so great because I just bridged it, and I was like taking on small,
my bad.
like super super small, like. But I was even doing like small budgets for even just like friends' bands, and I think that also just echoed what got me into all this from the very get go, because like, growing up and skateboarding and playing drums and all these bands.
You just seem like you bubble with this energy. You just channel it. And that's similar to the way that I am.
Yeah.
I don't have I'm not all architecture. I'm on my design is not just solo. It's not siloed. I have to have all these things pulling from different directions, and I don't know where it's going to come from. It'll be
totally
plants one day. It'll be I don't know
another
t-shirts the next. It'll be music.
One thing I love about you too, man, is that, and I identify with, was that you also instigate that inspiration and discovery. Like, you're traveling just as much as I found out that being. I now kind of weigh in like travel and vacationing is not so much even me just getting to kick it on the beach and just Cabo Keith drinking pina coladas, whatever. I'm not. I have those moments when I need to turn off, but most of the time it's like that travel is integral part of my process. Like, I have to be in another environment outside this bubble of Austin.
For me, it has to happen.
Yeah,
I have to move. I have to see something different. I can't
shake it
static.
up. Yeah, absolutely.
Remember that it was between me, you, and Jason, that little design competition that we had between us three?
Was it the AC systems?
No, we started, this was when we were all at Jenkins, and I think just to play around, we were just goofing around. We had this little design competition between
little
us.
charrettes.
Yeah, we would be like, all right, take 1 hour and design a shed. Or take take another hour and design. Yeah, one was like an AC vent or something, or it was an AC system, and I think the point was to try to get you out of your comfort zone and think about different design, and that was fun. Early,
man, they should do that now. I feel like, it's like whatever you can prompt ideation, where it's like what can exude form and function and be unique and not templative and boring like everything else we see. That's the other thing too, is like we see so much cool stuff I remember even working on the Willie Nelson stuff, the Luck Reunion stuff at the first round years ago when we first did the rebrand, and I was kind of at the time, like just wrapping 9 projects, so I was just burned out, and I had to just be like, all right, I'm going to New York. I'm gonna eat a ton of dim sum and dumplings and like gallery hop. Gonna refill and then come back to Austin and have that check where it's like, dang, this is still a small town. Like you can pretty much do anything you want. You know what I mean? And just having that check, like LA will do that, Paris will do that, New York. I don't always want to go to a big city. A lot of times I'll just want to go to like a, even going to like my girlfriend grew up outside of Marfa, so like I'll go even out west, and even a very desolate environment can check me. You know what I mean? I know like old Rick Rubin just like moved out there, and I've been like nerding out on him lately with like his book and kind of going to like trying to explore process and letting the environment be an inclusive part.
This is more about the place that you're going, less about what the place that you're going, more about you as a person.
Yeah,
like you can learn from. You don't have to have sensory overload to come back with a story of something. You can find something wherever you go.
Yeah,
even if that means that there's nothing that you're going and seeing.
Yeah, and it's
still a self-discovery thing.
It is self-discovery, but also if I wasn't able to obtain it, like during COVID summer 1 when we were all trapped inside washing down our grocery bags and didn't know what was going on. Right, it's like. I still had to chase that because I was busier than ever for whatever reason. I think people are still needing to keep their businesses alive. I mean, St. Elmo's a great example where you couldn't bring anybody to the brewery, but they had to move into a model of like, distro. Yeah, they had to, and release beers where you come by like a beer store and pick up like a 12-pack with your mask on. And so it's like 4 beers per month. And you're just like, I need 4 new ones. And where am I putting that? Not that it just, you have to kind of find that inspiration in so many different places. So I was just like, throwing money at like photo books and like bringing a lot of like Ed Ruscha books, like just buying old like edition stuff and like send it to me, just bring the museum to me, you know what I mean? And like and listening to like a lot of like, for whatever reason, that I was working on a lot of Carl for St. Elmo, and we always make a joke at the studio and in the brewery, but they're like such a band where it's like every time I've been working on them, I find myself in like 70s mode, like listening to a lot of Steely Dan. Yeah. And then Carl, when people are like, what is Carl about? It's like, yeah, it's always like throwing on all Steely, old Fleetwood, Eagles, just dad rock, That was me all during COVID. You should have seen me. I was a mess, man, because I had gone through this gnarly breakup. I had sold my house. COVID hit. I had moved into an Airstream behind Sahara Lounge that was fully renovated, and it was just like hot wired with speakers. My buddy Tim and his wife Sarah had opened up the place. They're like, hey, come stay over here, $500 a month. My studio is right down the road, like it's literally down Springdale, dude, is where it was. Like imagine driving from there to Sahara Lounge. And so it was like $500. So I was like jet set Keith, like getting over this breakup and just like living in this Airstream, fully renovated with my Boston Terrier. And like, I was like, all right, I'm going to London. All right, now I'm going to Cape Town. I'm jumping around and using that as sort of my home base, letting Austin be that, And every move has always been with the intention of like prompting discovery and inspo,
So you move from Central East Texas and you come to Austin. It's the natural thing. Y'all in on this place, or like everybody? Everybody keeps moving here. Everybody keeps on hanging their hat on here. The world is a big freeing place, so
dude. And that's so funny that we're saying this right now. We're talking about this because in that breakup, I went through these series of emotions that I think were what I call like a healthy detachment, where I was like, okay, I'm having to get over this breakup. Now I'm getting over this like house that I'm selling. But then I started reassessing Austin and being like, okay, so what's your relationship here? I was like, well, I'm not Keith in my 20s being like, this is my anchor, this is where I'm here forever. You know what I mean? I was more like, okay, it's a great city, but man, I just got back from like Cape Town, South Africa, watching my best friend get married. Like this tiny blue dot has like a lot of beauty in it, and like I didn't want to ever limit myself, so I started really like redesigning my life. And through that, I feel like during that really hard time, I was like, and a hard time for everybody during COVID, but it was kind of a twofer for me because I was juggling a lot of stuff. And man, I was a wild man, dude. I had like a desert rat haircut and this like T-bar mustache. I was like grilling out near the Airstream, like just like a wild man. And but what came out of that was like the true essence of like who I actually really am. And I have like chased that like since then, and it kind of like broke me open. It was like this death and rebirth thing that kind of went through.
Yeah, it's evolutions. It seems like the average person probably has like 5 to 7 rebirths or
I think
evolutions,
so, man.
And you've had 4,372.
Not to get, dude, I'm really into what you're talking about here because I was telling a friend, I was like, don't we replenish cells like every like 7 years? And I'm like, we obviously have a thread of who we are, but yeah, the Cabo will still stay in there. But like, I'm sure, I mean, hopefully I'm a little cooler when I'm in my like 50s and 60s. Like I look back at my 41-year-old self, and I'm like, God, you dork, you still didn't have it figured out. Like that's the thing that keeps pushing us along. You know what I mean? Like that's what I want. I want to be open too. I want to be I think to also grow as a human and an artist, you really have to be someone who is like malleable. You have to live in Austin and not like hate on the new. Be like, well, okay, there's some nuance, but like there's a lot of California emptying over here. I like bits of California, so like, does that mean more active lifestyle? Does that mean like interesting restaurants? Like, hopefully they can preserve the arts and build some museums here, which would be nice. Like more of that instead of just trying to like, I don't know.
Politics, beliefs, life in general. Everybody think that they put their stake in the sand, and then they say, that's what I'm believing, and I'm never going to come back to that thought, and I'm never going to... And the world moves. Things happen. Experiences happen. People change. Like the for Austin, for example, the city's changed.
Yeah, it has.
And so I think it's good to blink your eyes and come with the new set of lenses at what you're looking at, and you have to evolve with the times. You have to like it's such an antiquated thing to just like sit there and challenge what you believe.
Man, my cousin Matt Young had lived in New York for 6 years, and he said it best because he had moved back here. He lives in Austin now, and he said something so great when he moved back from New York. He's like, man, this is so great. It's so chill in Austin. I'm loving this. He's like, but I gotta tell you, I'm tired of hearing the old Austinites saying old Austin this, old Austin that. He goes, welcome to every borough annually in New York. And I was like, damn, that is so true. Like, things do evolve, and we just can't like claw and try to grip nostalgia. I mean, we can. I think we can just find nostalgia, but without trying to control it. Yeah, you know what I mean? You can't control anything in life, so it's like if you can go with the flow and then find those echoes of nostalgia or inspiration. You know what I mean? It's kind of a fine line between that for me. Is like what's hitting on the personal levels. You know what I mean? Like what's making me laugh or cry. There's like a documentary called like Beautiful Losers where like Mike Mills said that. He's like, if it doesn't make you laugh or cry, it's really like, you know, what is it? You know what I mean? And same with what Willie says about like when you write a song. It's the same kind of, idea. And so, I don't know. I'm trying to gravitate towards those things that pull from the emotions in that regard, But, yeah.
Well, so...
getting deep. We're talking quantum physics and emotions here. We
have a list of 15 things to talk about.
No,
you can go anywhere with me, man. I'll dive into it.
So. I love it. Honestly, I just describe a little bit. Like, what's your day to day? What are you doing every day? What's kind of your bread and butter project? Mm-hmm. What are you working on right now? What are you doing?
Right now is actually funny. I'm actually back on the Luck Reunion because. My good buddy Matt Beiser, who has been operating this for like 10 or 11 years or something like now, and he's a really great guy. He lives in New Braunfels, but has like been working on Luck Reunion forever, and we've been able to like jump on not just that project but several other projects. One including, I can't say too much about it, but one involves basically the surf park that's in Waco. So it's going back to Waco. I haven't been back there honestly much like since I had gone to school, but they have a giant surf park with all these professional surfers and all these other people like have been visiting. It's the largest one second largest in the nation, I think.
There was a Coors one east of town.
Yeah, there was one here.
Belly up. There was Inland Surf Park, I believe. And then there was one that got like a bacteria eating thing. Was it in?
Yeah, it's something in there eating flesh. And that's no good. Yeah, this is funny because he was like, Beiser's like me. I think he has sort of like that, like he's very much a beach guy, very much like resonates with like the idea of like the surfer mentality. It's very like meditation-esque. And I think he wanted to kind of like bridge, like how can I get back to surfing somehow? So he's like trying to move. We'll be rolling it out really soon, but it's another fest that he's basically rolling out on top of what we do at Luck Reunion. And it's like we've gotten to really like pair up and work on that on top of another project. And he's just one of those kind of guys that we have like a lot of creative alignment, and just like I don't know, he's a big food guy too, and just like really personable, and there's just no ego there, really great. And he came back to me and was like, hey, we need to do a refresh. I would love for you to rebrand Luck Reunion again. And Willie's getting up there. He's like he's in his 90s now. Yeah. So this is like, I feel like these years I'm getting to do this, I'm really trying to give it a lot of attention. And I'm not even really like the budget's there and everything like that, but it's even not about even like the money for me. It's just like just being able to like really take these opportunities to sort of like do some things that honor that artist. And like, I mean, he is like legend, and like when he is gone, it is going to be, I don't know what it's going to be like in the world of music and country and Texas alone, man. But he's like a walking Steinbeck character. He's it's Willie, man. You know what I mean? So I've been really just trying to throw a lot of energy into that. In terms of like what's been like kind of the bread and butter was sort of like that project I was telling you about with the recent visits to Paris, Texas, which has been a majority of my work has been based in hospitality. lot of it with restaurants, a lot of it with like the beer and beverage world, like St. Elmo or Lone Star and Independence and all that. My studio mate Lauren Dickens pretty much handles like all of Independence, so I've been really kind of like in terms of beer, just like really honing in on just St. Elmo. They're in the process of like launching their second brewery, which is like Northeast near the new beer works, which is where those guys first started. It's funny that they're both going to be next door, but.
Like Mueller, Northeast?
Yeah, I'll be like near Mueller, like almost near like that. You know that dive bar called Silver Metal? You ever been there? It's really cool. You need to go. It's unreal. It's dude. In terms of discovery, you'll walk in there and be like, okay, like I can drink 8 beers here. It's and so we're kind of like we're working on this new phase of like St. Elmo, and I'm just kind of really trying to focus. I don't want to work on like 30 breweries, I also don't want to pigeonhole myself as like, oh, you're the beer branding guy, or you're doing restaurants and this and this. You know what I mean? It's just like I need it to change. I need new, and this is why so with St. Elmo, it's like nice because I kind of like I've been working with them forever. My best friend who actually went to Baylor too. These twins, they're called the Gin and Tempo twins. One of them, Drew, he went to actually med school. His brother Matt lives in San Antonio, lived in Marfa for a while. And Drew was a doctor, went to med school the whole bit, ends up like not liking it at all, and ends up like brewing beer in his like garage apartment at one point. And then I was like, hey, you meet St. Elmo. So he's now, I get to work with one of my best buds, you know what I mean? Like in the brewery, and like,
that's awesome.
And his wife is working there too. And like Brian Butler, Brian Winslow is the founder there. And they're one of my longest lasting like work relationships. Like it's been like 6 years now, and honestly things really took like an unbelievable turn when like Carl hit the shelves, because that beer alone is what I think like really sent things into another and on another level. There was more distro and placement and recognizability, and it just grew their audience. And now that's the other thing we're working on, is like these 4 other beers that are following after, so these other core cans. And it's been a tricky challenge because they don't want to mirror what Carl. I don't know if you've seen the Carl can, but it's that white can. It's like it has like the blue.
It's
script.
Like really minimal,
real minimal. Man, and it's crazy because it took like 6 months to work on that piece forever ago. And it was one of those things where they were like, I don't know, Keith, it's pretty simple. It just says Carl, and it's and I was like,
it's beautiful.
I was like, please trust me on this. This thing's gonna like really cut through all the noise on the beer shelves, and it'll work. And it did work. And I was really stoked on it because it was
convinced them, dude.
I did. It was a hard one because I was like, man, when have I let you down? I've been here for like 4 or 5 years. Like, come on, y'all. And they're like, all right, we'll do it. And they pulled the trigger. And I don't think anybody's looking back now, because now we're in a place where we're like, okay, now there's these other beers that follow it, but we can't play off the aesthetics of what the Carl can looks like, because it tends to shadow it. So it's a new challenge. Like, okay, these other beers, what are they? What do they look like? And also in a sea of so many designs out there, it's like a whole nother challenge. So
do you just replicate it? Do you have just
no, I didn't. We went a whole nother way. So like, yeah, I've been working on it for, I guess, since April. And we finally wrapped it yesterday. That's why I went out to happy hour. It was going a little wild. I was like, we're done. 6 months, baby. Like, just like so like on cloud 9, just getting on the other side of that. And also you were asking earlier about the bread and butter, the big ones. Like, I feel like I've been really invested in this Paris, Texas project, not only because that visit and seeing that town was so inspiring, but I think it's going to be the catalyst for so much like of the kind of work I want to do that preserves older structures. I've been really tied to things like that are not just like new build outs, and like sometimes like taking a shell and then how do you sprinkle and preserve what's there, and like not adding a lot of quote branding end quote to it.
It's beautiful like, as is. Don't touch it.
Yeah, exactly. Like Little Trouble, that was that restaurant I did in Lockhart. That was a lot like that, where it's like we're moving into a 1902 building across from the courthouse, this red brick building.
Dude,
it was the guys from Justine's, and they were like, we can't do anything in Austin because it's so expensive, so we had to go out to Lockhart. And during COVID, it was really, he almost convinced me, like their exec chef, Casey, was like, Keith, you got to get out here, man. You can ride your dirt bikes on, like, you just jump like railroads and like farmland all you want. Have your own. You can play, be a kid again. Play drums at midnight. Nobody's gonna bother you. You can live out, And like speaking of small town Keith here, I'm like, man, you're like, this is sounding real nice. But I didn't move to Lockhart, obviously. But that was a really great opportunity too, where it's like we just put a neon, and then kind of like as you go downstairs to that whole what the experience is, it was like I got to really play into the ambiance and like the experiential design component, which is like
it's
where
that's where you draw them in. It's like this thing of interest.
And like when things have an air and an energy about it. Like it's that's the thing that's attracting me these days. Where I'm like, okay, I still have like a lot of investment in this because of that. You know what I mean? I'm not going to be an interior designer by any means, and I don't want to be. I'm not qualified. I feel like to be even like an architect. But if I can bring like a brand identity or like a visual identity to some sort of concept into a space where people walk in and they're like,
bring the idea home.
What is this all about?
That was one of your questions. How much does he branch off into other things?
Yeah, I was going to ask like if you ever dabbled in other areas of design, because dude, I look at your stuff and I'm like, man, this is fantastic.
Thanks, bud.
Like I love everything, like just the style of your design. I'm like, man,
thank you.
How can you collaborate? You're playing in this 2-dimensional realm. It's like, how can we get it, where we're playing in 3D and
and we're moving on that too. Yeah, we're definitely moving in that direction and I think it's been a conversation where it's like social media and the digital age has kind of prompted this thing where it's like, flat 2D images from an algorithmic standpoint. This is so nerdy that I'm talking about this, but it's the truth. It's like in terms of us trying to market ourselves and our work, those things don't have as much traction. So I started talking to my student mates about kind of what I was telling you before we hit record. We were talking about sort of like a lot of my student mates and I going on these collective efforts in order to curate the kind of work we want to do. I think in terms of like showing those case studies and work, we want to go about it that's not just flat images and like really nice pretty architectural photos and this. Like, not to dismiss that, there's definitely a home for that, but I love the idea of like, how can we we've had some this video team, they're called Lua. They unfortunately just moved out this last week. Yet my buddy Matt Rainwaters is also a videographer and he's moving into space. But we were talking about how video is almost like this new format to help bridge that. It not only just algorithmically, like how things are turning into this like reels and whatnot. People want to see moving images, and also experientially, like we were talking about that with even one of the bars that we wrapped up in Denver. We're like, what if we just did like a point of view where you're walking downstairs and you're ordering a shot of whiskey and a beer at the bar, and you're pivoting over and looking at the menu and you're taking in the ambiance and the design, and like that is so much more interesting than like me just slapping like 10 photos in a carousel and be like, here's this work. Like, unless you're really bridging what it feels like to step into that dark, gloomy, romantic bar and order these cocktails and see that menu and hear this music, like you're gonna have no idea what we're going for here. You know what I mean? And so it's like, I don't know. It's curious to see where that even goes. I mean, I'm sure we'll be talking about VR probably like in 30 years of like, you want to see his case study? We'll put on this helmet. You know what I mean?
And you want the man with the perfect mustache, with the perfect apron, with the perfect thing.
Yeah.
He's always
all the details,
needing the lemon. Yeah,
that it's all about that for me, man. And it's all about like, I hate going into places and seeing just like a logo slapped. I love going to places where I'm like, man, where are we? Like, you ever gone to like Tartine in San Fran where you're like, man, I know I'm looking for Tartine. I want to get this croissant or this baked good, but there's like this black building with like a line outside. You're like, I think that's it. And then you're staring in the window and you see a menu. It says Tartine. That looks right.
Discovery.
Yeah, Discovery.
I like that idea
of
of like this great spot that really has no branding or no advertising.
Yeah.
And you discover it, because I was reading the other day about this steakhouse that's like way up North Texas, like in the Panhandle. What is it up there? It's like North of Amarillo, almost on the border.
Is it not the one that has like the 72-ounce steak challenge?
No, I've been there. I know.
Oh man, I have a wild.
I've been there several times. The Big Texan.
Yeah, the Big Texan. That's it. I had a friend of a friend. I've met him. His name was DeGoose, and he actually did that challenge. He sat there and did the 72-ounce steak, and then he was like, literally after you eat, because you have to eat all the sides and the whole steak. And Goose literally sat back and he just goes, this is my friend Buck's story, so I can't take all the credit. But literally Goose sat back and he goes, do you guys have any pie? And he ate pie. They were driving to Coachella. They said that the AC in the van cut so they could just smell Goose's meat sweats the whole way. It's so rough. I was like, that's the most disgusting story I've ever heard of in my life.
There's the steakhouse, and I wish I could remember the name, but again, it's like there's no branding or advertising, but it's like this little wooden sign on the side of the road.
We do what we do.
Steakhouse, it's like an arrow pointing this way, and everybody drives by it. They know nothing about it, but you go there, and I've read the reviews on it, and it's like, this is the most amazing steakhouse ever.
Wow,
and
that's so cool.
And little spots like that, I think, are super cool, and they kind of, there's this.
They don't try.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't seem that way. It doesn't seem like they're trying, but it's like they let the work speak for itself.
That's the best right there. And it's like when things get like commodified and it blows it out and there's like so much talk and it lets down expectations, that's one thing. But if you're the one walking in there and knowing that you're getting like, some sort of like, $40 steak that is just like blowing your mind and you just followed that wooden sign with the arrow and know that and it delivered on another level that you never forgot. That's what I'm all about. I feel like a lot of times, like Austin is missing a little bit of that, like the grit and like the kind of discovery and with a lot of that, because a lot of these things get blown up so big and let down expectations. You'll go to some of these newer restaurants and drop hundreds of dollars, even with like a group of friends or like on bottles and like a really nice dinner. But is that dinner sticking on the level of like something you maybe had in New York or like, in some place where it's like, I don't know, I had this one time and it definitely stuck to my ribs. You know what I mean? Like just those. I don't know those sort of experiences, and I'd like to see Austin like challenge that more, like just break outside of what we kind of know. Like there's been so many concepts that have like come through here, and it just was one of those moments where it was like Austin's quote not ready for it. Like there was a friend's restaurant that just didn't make it near Counter Cafe on the east side a while back, and I swear this like space is haunted because we had some friends like trying to do like a tiki bar kind of like concept after, but the restaurant prior to that like went under because it was like so vegetable focused. It was like small plate, but like at the end of the day, Austin wanted tacos and barbecue, so it didn't really survive. You know what I mean? Yeah. And we get it. It's like that is like, I mean, it's like you come here and do that. You can you're definitely saturating it, but it's like when are people going to take those jumps of like, let me try this and see what y'all think.
Did you ever see that in Bryan? Because I know this happened a lot or a few times in Brenham where I grew up. But like, there's this one, like you said, this restaurant that was haunted. Mm-hmm. So like, it's this one building, and it seems to be like almost like a hermit crab. Like one restaurant will come in and they'll run for a while, and then they'll fail and they'll move out, and then it stays dormant, and then another restaurant will come in. And rebranded, but it's the same building and everything.
It's something, man. I don't know what that's all about. I mean, even the original Easy Tiger has kind of had its days, but even like, I don't want to name off the restaurant that's there now, but you could probably guess, but it's like essentially where Kanji is. There's been like a slew of concepts before that within a decade, and like it's hard, man, like rolling out a lot of those like I used to, outside of design, want like my girlfriend and I were talking about this on the way to Carly and I were heading to... I go to Deep Eddy every day, man. I'm a pool rat. That's your thing, too, is like... Yeah. I'm always swimming laps because I'll just get in there and swim, and then, like, it kind of, like, I don't know, loosens my brain up. It gets all the anxiety out, and then I want to just go make art. I don't know if that makes sense, but
there's something about, like, physical exercise. A lot of times, like...
A little vitamin D,
You probably don't... Well, you probably do. Like, a lot of times, when, like, in the evenings when I'm texting you, like, hey, we should do this, or hey, there's a thought about this. I'm working out. Yeah. Usually, that's what I do something.
I can definitely relate to that.
And, like, the blood's flowing, the oxygen in your brain. You're like, oh, this is great. Let's do this.
What I was telling Carly was, like, she asked me, she's like, well, what would you want to do outside of this thing? Because I feel like there's so many times where I'm like, I do have hobbies, I guess, and things that I enjoy out of this, but I'm not really diversifying a lot of those things. And it's like, and what would I want to do if, like, AI took over my job and tomorrow I didn't have this design stuff? I was like, everything was just like gone. I remember somebody brought this up, and I was like, a part of me where I was like, almost like, I was like kind of like smiling about it because I had different, like, again, that attachment thing. I was like, that's interesting. I guess maybe I go work in a vineyard. You know what I mean? I'm just like, if I didn't have a choice, it'd be like, and I had to pivot, it would be this. But for a good while, it was wanting to move into like maybe doing a restaurant or like a small natural wine bar or something like that. And now after my friends doing that stuff, I'm like, man, that is a gamble. It is so hard to pull that off. And as y'all know, like building these things and how much money goes into it, and then not seeing profit for a year or two, it's like
it was the first 3 years the hardest, I think, with small businesses. That's when a lot of them fail.
Yeah, but I want to say I'm glad you brought the exercise thing, because that's something for me. I came from like a family. My dad was a doctor, nurse. My mom's nurse practitioner. Sister's a nurse. I was like the one like kid that was like kind of into music and like drawing and all that. So like, but they were all super active, and I had grown up playing basketball, skateboarded, did some things, but like I never really, and I appreciate exercise, but I never got into it. But now, as of lately, living in Austin, I don't know. I think it's also, my studio mates are pretty active people. Like Lauren is super active with basketball, and I was actually going to a trainer with her. I went to like Barry's boot camp. I was loving these exercises that were just like kicking my ass. There's something about that was just like so nice to have something just like completely destroy you, and then you kind of come out and be like, okay, I'm not dead, I'm alive. Like, you know what I mean? I feel good, and like I can have the worst client call in the, at 3:00, and I'm just like, all right, whatever, cool, I'm gonna go get some coffee now. You just like, everything rolls off your shoulders, and I realized that like I started repositioning like physical exercise as a tool for kind of we were talking about process. Yeah,
it is. So I ran 3 miles before I came here, and lifted weights afterwards, and I feel
you're getting after it, Mark.
Yeah,
awesome,
Mark,
man.
you're looking
like
fine.
Dude, I did not see. He posted a photo earlier that was so inspiring, where you were like 200 something pounds,
265 to
265, buddy, and then you're like and depressed, and I could see it in your face.
Yeah.
But then seeing like in that second photo where Mark's eyes are glowing, and this guy's like, look how happy this guy is, man. You look great, GQing it over here, dude.
Thanks, dude. It's not like rocket science. Like take care of your body, take care of your mind.
Yeah,
like
it seems like
it comes out in your work.
We've
lost that these days. I mean, people
absolutely
like physical exercise is so important. You know, because for me, it's like if I put myself, or I try to, through some pretty hard exercises. It's like when you come out of it, and it's like, okay, I know if I can get through that, I can get through just about anything else.
That's so true. Yeah,
you know what I mean.
Absolutely.
And it's like it really. You know, I like to say I'm not working out, I'm training, and it's like, what are you training for? It's like, well, I'm training for life, man. Come on, I'm training for life.
Yeah, I hear you, buddy. I hear you, and I think it's really nice to set those like physical challenges that really just sort of I honestly really got into this. One of your questions that you had hit me up earlier was around like sort of physical challenges, but then also mental challenges. Like I got real deep into this stuff like through like meditation, and I got into like hot yoga for a hot minute because my ex actually taught it, and it would beat it out of you, man, like a Barry's class. It was really exhausting, and I was in the best shape of my life. I'm trying to get back to like just like Cabo Keith bod. I want to be able to just I want to be able to just like not really wear Speedo burn swings, but if I wanted to, I could do that. No, but
now, buddy.
Yeah, you have to edit that one out. No, yeah, right, yeah. But what I was gonna say was, I went down this wormhole of like exercise, also bridging something that was like a meditative factor, because I could finally like exercise and bridge like sort of these moments that felt like I was engaging the runner's flow or the runner's high, or you know what I mean, or like checking out like, well, where was I last hour when I was running through the woods or doing whatever, you know what I mean? And so that also started me down this like weird path of like I got into meditation really like intensely, like David Lynch and TM and everything he was into, and then I really got into like weird stuff like float tanks, honestly, for a quick hot minute, and then like a guided meditation, hypnosis, and I was like, man, the mind and the body are these two things I really feel like if I can really like dial them in to be like hyper aware of both of these models, like they're going to be these really active tools for creativity. And I would go to the meditation hypnotist, this guy, I'll never get his name, is James Hazelrig, I think. He was like up north, and I would walk in, and like the whole room looked like Sharper Image. It was just like a leather chair that had like, you know what I mean? He's like, sit down. And there's like all these crystals, and like he would put me under, and he would record it, and he'd walk me through it. And I told him my whole objective was essentially just to bridge like a better internal monologue. So there was some anxiety going on there, but then the other part of it too was like, I was like, James, how can you bridge, like how can you peel this onion back to where I'm more open and able to take more risk in my work? And I'm still there. I'm still trying to get out of my comfort zone. Like that Luck Reunion thing was like, it's a totally different branding assignment because it's not me building a logo. It's like that was already built. So it's like, what am I rebranding? So it was like all the stuff he had referenced, which you'll see in a lot of the work that comes out. He was like showing me like old Ethiopian jazz records and international records where you like saw like the typeset on an old photocopier, you know, like cut out photo in a really crappy way, and then it would be like photographed and then layered. And I was like, man, I'm literally gonna have to go the old analog way to like recreate this art, and you know what I mean? It's a different process. So, and I like that. It puts me in this like uncomfortable way. I get like a lot of anxiety, but once I get going, man, I'm like, okay, here we go. Let's see where this.
That's what I wanted to ask you. Was what are those things that get you out of your comfort zone? What challenges you in? You know, we were talking about some physical challenges.
Yeah.
What challenges you in your art?
In my art. I mean, I think it's just sort of like just kind of moving away from the redundancy where it's like it gets a little monotonous, and I love and appreciate the work I do, but when someone's just like, hey, I need this, and it's this, and then it's this, and then this, like it's like a logo, and then like a menu, and then like signage, and then it's this, and it's like that's all really fun, and I'm very invested in the work that I say yes to, but when those weird ones come my way that are just like a really interesting concept, and it's something I've really never worked on before. Like there was this agency here in town. They're like a sister agency to Wine Kennedy, and they're called Callan. And one of the projects that hit me up with months ago was like, hey, can you do some like literally brand a giant like solar powered Roomba? And it was like the size of that couch, like it was huge. I'll have to show you a photo of this thing. And it was like, and they created this thing just so they could put it downtown, and it would like bump into people and bump into cars, and they just were doing it as like a guerrilla marketing kind of thing, and like made a commercial out of it, which is hilarious. And I was like, wow, I've never branded a Roomba or a solar powered 10-foot Roomba before. But those little funny like sort of opportunities where you're like, okay, this is really weird and out of the norm, but like what a weird challenge. Like I have to get outside of my normal protocol, I should say, or process to sort of assess work like that. You know what I mean? But I really love that, and like it's nice to just like, again, like getting outside of hospitality too, like doing things that are just in a different medium, or I should say not so much a different medium, but just like I guess stylistically, they like the Luck Reunion thing is like so much of getting back to my roots of like what it felt like making show posters for, you know what I mean, and playing and trial and error and experimentation. Like I never take time to do that most of the time. I have a very clear idea of what is going down because of the process, which usually starts where I'm like, the client comes, I'm giving them this questionnaire and like all these questions to extrapolate all this information, and then I'm pulling some mood boards and like treatments and references, and then I just distill all that into like what I present.
So let's talk about that. Yeah. That's one of my questions.
Yeah.
So in architecture, you come in, they say, I need a 3-2 with a couple car parking, here's my lot. And then you're like, oh God, okay, I'll put it here. And then there's always the initial idea. It's like, how do I do this thing? And then there's the idea. And oftentimes there's a lot of input that comes in that comes contrary to the original idea.
Yeah.
And then it has to mesh and meld to it. And then
is that because there's too many cooks in the kitchen usually? Is that usually the case? You have too many voices kind of like wanting to
or self-doubt or whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, it can come from a myriad of different things because design is not a linear process. It's very all over the place.
Sure.
Then there's the output. So there's the beginning, they call it the partie in architecture, where this is the sketch, and then there's the output, and there's all in between. How much of what you're doing at the very beginning shows up at the end?
Well, it's funny. A lot of it does show up. I worry more about sort of like after the handoff is made, will they be able to continue the continuity of the brand? Because sometimes those things fall off if it's not sort of like managed. You know what I mean? They'll usually you have to really set them up with like almost like these like guidelines. A backbone to where it's like it's going to be dummy free, error free, where it'd be really hard to mess this up.
And you have to have buy-in in order for that to work. So
right.
you're obviously a good salesman to be able to make sure.
And honestly, to your question too, Mark, I think that's another part of me where I'm like even now moving into a place with my career where I'm very interested in the idea of like partnership, kind of like what I've like discussed, with like specific clients of like, we can keep this going, but how do we kind of keep this thread of continuity here? How do we also evolve it together where it just like feels right and doesn't fall off? Those collaborative efforts are really nice. I think a partnership is really cool because there's like self-investment in it. It's not so much you just always building value for somebody else. It's also like, well, I also have like some,
it's not a dilution, it's a times two.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Does that answer your question in regard to that? I guess in like leading up to
in architecture, there's so
many
other factors.
So like in architecture, does it get like you're saying like whenever you kind of have the finished product, by the end of the process, a lot of that just got lost, like what you guys were hyped about?
I don't know. People live in what I do, and so it's like it balloons or it gets moved, and then it's like you come out with this thing, and you're looking at the plan, and you're looking at the section, and you're like, oh my god! And on top of that is the design, where you go through the process of design, where you're like, oh my gosh, I sketched something, it's beautiful, it's awesome. And you get in, you're like, oh, I gotta put details into this. Oh god, I suck. Oh god, this is bad. Or
making it malleable because you don't know what they're gonna do with the space, because it's like, what if like you build a beautiful space and they're like they have like a terrible interior designer, or they have terrible
like
taste.
Dots.
They're like some like
and then so and then
polka dots.
It's two layers. So it's one, it's in my giving service to a client that is getting at the end of the day what they want. And then it's two, it's you going through the pains that design is to be able to get through the hard, and then you hit it, and then I don't ever think that there's a hit print thing. I think that you can always put more time into it.
Oh man, you're nailing the head with that one.
And so it's it's wacky wavy, dude. It's like all over the place.
That's your experience with it, if you think about it, because everybody else who's seeing the finished product that Mark worked on is like, beautiful, Mark, it looks great. But it's
always better in between the years than what you remember than what it is at the end of the day has been my experience. I've never had such a purity of like, it came through literally exactly the way that I thought it.
It's never going to be that way. And that's why we were talking about earlier, like in terms of like kind of being more malleable and open, exuding openness to whatever comes your way. Be like, all right, let's just see where this goes. Let's like roll with the flow of it. You know what I mean? And like, I think also for you to not be fully like happy with sometimes, well, I don't want to say happy with the finished product, but maybe you're just being, you're tired of looking at, you've been working on for years. You're like, oh, on to the next.
To get off.
That is actually a good thing, because it's pushing you. It's the fuel under, at the underbelly that's pushing you to the next thing. So I think if you like settled and were like, I don't know, if everything was like, yeah, man, I kicked ass at this. Yeah, this is great. Like you just, I don't know. I don't know what would fuel you for the future stuff.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Always room for improvement. And that's what drives me. Is There's no perfection. We said this. It's you can continue scrolling in on this thing and it's not ever going to be, you can call it perfect, but you're scrolling a little bit more. I can fix it. Scrolling. Oh God. And so it's
yes, most definitely. Yeah. I think that's a big reason too, is like why I didn't want to just have a website for so many years. Now it's like, I'm finally I'm re-gutting it right now and putting that all out there. But a lot of that work was unrelated to design, because it let people into where if they have found that alignment with me, where they're like, I really like the way Keith looks at things, like and it can be design or visual photographs or like music. It's like when we have these conversations and we talk about this and we have that alignment, you're going to entrust me with this because you see that I'm bringing ideas to the table, but also like, you know what I mean? Like we're like getting to a place where I get it. Like I feel like I'm a pretty I'm a very like a big empath kind of person. So like real hypersensitive to like stuff like that. So like with body language and people, like I love getting to talk to people and like really like dig in and be like, man, what do you want to do here? What are you going for? You know what I mean? And it's helpful to like get away from a studio and travel with those clients, or even get a beer and like sit down and talk life and art and all this and get to the gut of it and then make that alignment. And then it's just kind of those of course moments. Then from there, the project feels like a collaboration for them because they feel self-invested with you. They're like, Keith gets me, blah, blah, blah. And I think that personal connection is really
I love that trust. I love knowing
I do too.
We have that paralleled understanding of what the objective is.
That's
and
huge.
Both going at it, and it's not contentious. And then I love
exactly, and that's why it's been so hard for me to ever like work for an agency, because I didn't have any of that. I didn't get to like sit down with a client and like like have a really great dinner and talk live, hear about their kids and their story,
make your own agency.
Exactly, and it's like I don't know. I think that's really helpful when you get to know the person. You can really, even that can help be informative on what the project needs. When you're like, oh, they're kind of like this.
Yeah,
I think they're into this, this, and this. You know what I mean? And that questionnaire has a lot of that stuff. It's like, down to like asking what their favorite color is, their favorite band, to like, what are you doing this for? And they're like, wow. It almost, a lot of times it helps the client reflect on it. They're like, man, I haven't really ever been asked that question like that before. And it sort of like informs them and gives them kind of more fire.
One question can answer 100, can have 100 different answers.
Oh,
it's
absolutely.
Like, there's one in architecture, I don't remember who said it, but they say whenever you get out of bed, whenever your feet hit the ground, what do you want to feel? Like, what do you want? What texture do you want? What's the tactile quality? What do you want? And that can mean they could say something soft, and it's like, maybe they like it answers so many different things.
Yeah. I'm trying to. My mornings are really weird. I have this thing where I wake up a lot of times, to be super transparent. I wake up a lot of times like with kind of in a funk. I'll have like really weird anxiety in the morning, and that's a big reason why I go to the pool at 7 a.m. because I'm just jumping in that cold water like Wim Hof style and resetting and like
baptism.
Yeah, and then I'm like swimming laps and doing this one rigorous thing where I'm not thinking about it, and then I'm like, oh my gosh, and then the ideas are coming to me, and then I'm like, okay, I gotta go get coffee at Carpenter and then run over to the studio now. You know what I mean? And like, and then I'm like rolling there, and it's like, like just like wet swimming suit. The Birkenstocks are on. I'm like chilling with my cappuccino. I'm like driving with the windows down, blasting record, roaring through Austin over to the east side, over to the studio.
You're a cool fucking guy, man.
Thanks, man. I'm trying to live life, man. I'm trying to hold on to these like minutes and seconds. I'm trying to like make these days count. I think like, and that's why I like getting up real early now. It's not just because I'm like older. It's like I want to live longer days. Like I want those days to like really count. You know what I mean? And I'm really anxious if I'm not inspired. So if I'm just kind of like sitting around not doing anything, engaging anything, or have some sort of problem to solve, work related or not, I don't know. And that might be the OCD in me. I don't know what that is, but it's something that I keep chasing, and I don't know what I'm even chasing sometimes. You know what I mean? I can't even define it all the time. It's just like it's definitely creativity though. I know that's filling me in ways that is like sort of the language I want to swim in all the time, you know? Yeah. And I'm always feeding it. I'm doing whatever I can to feed that. Yeah. You know?
Same. There's
yeah. That's what my quote self-care is, I guess, if you were to call it that. It's like helping facilitate that. That's where my finances go. That's where my attention goes. I know this will benefit this. And it's not because I'll be more effective or more productive. It's just like I'm happier when I'm like really inspired. Or if I'm like part of that. Okay, so going back to that sort of like morning anxiety thing I was telling you about, there's two ways you can go with that. Where you're like, man, what is all this? This is such a trip. Life. What is all this?
Down or up?
Yeah. But then on the other part of it, where I'll be like, man, but I'm almost like really inspired by the mystery of it all. I'll be like, what is going on here? And I'm in this metal box rolling over to the studio. I'm on this tiny blue dot. What? Like I'll just like chart like blue skying it and looking at it and be like, and that makes life just like so insane and just so bizarre.
Beautiful.
Yeah, beautiful too. I mean, I have to go in that. I have to stay in that realm, not being like this is like blowing my mind. I have to be more like, what a beautiful thing. I mean, there's a lot of weird things in life that we don't understand, but I think that's why a lot of times what inspires me too, outside of like, I don't just like hop online and jump and check out Pinterest boards or like Tumblrs and stuff or like visual ephemera to get inspired by. It's definitely a place for that. I think a lot of times I'm like looking in science, architecture, physics. You know what I mean? I'm looking at things like show me like a David Bowie documentary or like a documentary on like black holes, and like let this like throw me like into a spin mentally, and whatever comes out of that is going to be creative. That's just the way my brain works. You know what I mean? I like stuff like that.
Just to pivot, AI.
Yeah.
Pros and cons.
Oh yeah. I would love to dig into this.
What's your opinion?
Man, well, okay, so we have some studio mates that are part of an AI company, and I had a really conversation with their old creative director who had recently left, my buddy Ty. He had told me this story. He basically announced it when ChatGPT had kind of like hit the feeds on Twitter. He's like, hey, you guys have heard about this ChatGPT thing, right? And he goes, yeah, all these high school and college kids are writing papers on it. It's like phasing out copywriters and newscasters and all that. And
education in general.
All education in general. And I was like, man, that's a trip. I was like, oh, that's really some Skynet, 2024, like, here we go, news. But then he was like, but then it's moving on. There's actually like programs, Keith, where they can say like, Keith Davis Young. I'm typing in Keith Davis Young, logo like Keith Davis Young, or like logo like Keith Young, or mural art, whatever, X, and then we'll just whatever keywords are using. AI will work the same way as like Google search. So it's like it's really opening up the conversation we started going into when he talked about that program was intellectual property, and I think there's gonna be more like theft essentially.
Yep.
Once we kind of like move into this technological advanced stage, whatever void we're rolling into here. But and when he was like kind of telling me that, I was kind of like, well, there's like nothing I can really do about that. And that's honestly when I had the idea of like, when literally in my brain I started like smiling, instead of being like, oh my god, am I gonna have a job tomorrow? I was more like, oh man, if this like all ends, like it wasn't like I hate what I do, I love what I do, but it was almost like if I didn't have a choice, I would just pivot so hard. I'd go do something with my hands. I'd want to learn how to weld or work on a vineyard or do something that was just like fulfilling a whole nother side of me with the last half of my life, I guess. And I think that thing's still in its motion. It was really funny. I told this story to that same friend of mine that I told you when I was in San Antonio, my friend Ryan, and he's such an optimist. He was like, he just kind of laughed and he was like, huh, that's cool. It kind of sounds cool as a tool for ideation. And I'm like, I never really thought about that. Yes. Like I could literally take like some of these programs and be like, hey, show me different ways that I can think of yada, 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 and then develop those ideas. And maybe that's evolution. So I don't want to even write off this. Sure. Because I had a client even that was a VR client, and I was so against, like, man, I don't need another thing that's going to plug me in. Like, I don't need to be connected to, more devices. And until I stepped in, he was like, hey, Keith, he put the helmet on me. It's in this big open room. And he was like, okay, I was in this desert. And he's like, I want you to draw the logo in this desert. And I started redrawing the logo. Like, he imported the art and it appeared in the sky. So I grabbed it and stretched it and moved it around. And then I started drawing it. And then, Dude, but then I started walking around the art, and that's when my brain had this synapse, like, what's happening? I'm able to, like, step behind it and around it, and it seemed, and it, like, that was the synapse that I had where I was like, okay, like, this is fascinating. And I think all these things are going to go into territories that are so, like, far beyond what we can even grasp. Like, I heard some futurists talking about how, like, even with VR, he goes, oh, yeah, the future will be, like, it'll change filmmaking, because even filmmakers, you'll have these people where it's like, you'll walk into a theater with helmets, and when they put the helmets on, they're watching this Brad Pitt movie. There's no film crew behind Brad. Like, you're in the scene with Brad and whoever, and like looking around, and that narrative, you get to drive the narrative, which goes against the director's intention of telling a story. So
curated, you look here. Yeah.
So it keeps, in any medium of art, even music, it keeps battling like the human essence. No matter what, it just gives the freedom to be like, well, I want this. It's like this Amazon, like, I push a button, you give me this. Like, it's kind of moving into this, like, consumer stage. I think that's the only incentive, honestly.
The only bee I made in graduate school was with a professor I will not name. And I told her,
they're listening
she
right
has
now.
a Jane Jacobs. You guys know Jane Jacobs?
Yeah.
This idea of, like, it's this homegrown, hometown, like, there's the community is at the center of everything. And I wrote a contrarian belief that we're all going to be, 500 years from now, our heads are going to be like 5 times larger than what they are. We're all going to be in these, like, rolling devices, and we're going to have a headset on us, and it won't matter what the aesthetic quality is around us. It will be via a lens, and so
bizarre.
It won't matter the connection between. We're going to be these cyborgs that are
like Wall-E or
it probably will. I mean, honestly, look at
I made a bee. I made a bee because of that paper.
Man, I think, and I know this has, like, been beaten.
So mad.
Like, this has been, like, this is like beating a dead horse here, but it's like that movie Idiocracy was so prophetic in regard to, like, where things are going. Like, you can make bridges between, like, what's going on, and you're like, wait, we have that now. You know what I mean? Like, it's slowly moving into that.
So true.
Isn't it? It's like
every day it gets closer and closer.
Every day, man. Yeah, I heard a really interesting concept about from a futurist. Sam Harris, I think, said this, and he was I don't know if you, like, follow any of his works or his writings, but he's a fascinating guy. And Sam Harris is saying the whole objective with futurists is, like, they think this development technologically is, like, essentially our like fountain of youth. Like, the whole objective is to try to figure out how to live forever, and the idea is that who you are, they think that this is really out there, but stick with me here. He was like, who you are at some point will be able to be uploaded like an energy or a cloud. And I know this theory's been thrown around, but if that's what we're shooting for, man, I don't know. That just sounds so
dismal.
Yeah, so dismal, and, like, I don't know what that even looks like. Like,
and I agree with the ability that could be done.
Yeah.
Even then, you're copying yourself.
Right.
And uploading it.
You're still uploading it.
You still would be
here.
Yeah,
you would still be here, but then there's still a version.
An uploaded version of you, so your conscience is still here. You're not going to live on.
Yeah, it's... I don't think people even understand what... Yeah, and there's all these, like, weird, like, futurists, too, that are just, like, injecting themselves with, like, you know, like, young blood, like, younger... Yeah, have you heard about all those guys that are doing this? It's really crazy. Like, this one guy in, like, San Fran is, like, taking his son's blood and then, like, injecting himself, and it, like, to try to live
I think I have heard of that. Yeah.
It's really a trip. I mean, people are just, like, grasping at straws to try to, like...
To defeat death. It
defeat death, yeah.
It seems like technology, this, like, occurred to me the other day, like, the advance of technology almost feels like the Tower of Babel.
Oh, yeah.
You know that story?
Yeah, sure.
So, you know, the Tower of Babel was like, hey, we can look at us, you know, look how great we are and the things that we can build and create. You know, we don't need God. We're going to build this tower to reach heaven. And that seems like technology is kind of progressing in that way. It's like, you know, look at what we can do and look how awesome we are. And,
I think it's a lot of ego, man, at the root of it. It's just, like, all ego. Like, people want bragging rights by it, so they're willing to spend millions, trillions of dollars, you know what I mean, to, like, genetically modify or bridge this other way of, like, what we think we can achieve, like, living forever. You know what I mean?
Are we solar flare away from that house of cards collapsing and back to the Stone Age?
Man,
there goes internet.
Honestly, I've been really getting not to go to you know, talk about dystopian stuff, but I really do get worried about Austin with, like, just this, like, hot heat. We were driving around, like, even near, like, what's over here by 360? That creek, Bull Creek, or whatever. Is that? Yeah. And I used to take my old English bulldog down there, Moose. I would take Moose down there, like, go swim around, and And it's just dry as a bone. And I think about that, like what this even looks like, you know, like 10 or 20 years from now, you know what I mean? Like what it,
we can't be proactive anymore. We have to be reactive.
Yeah.
Like we have to like as designers for a space, like we have to, oh shit, this is the new normal. Like,
and adapt to it.
Listen to anybody for the last 40 years.
Yeah. We're way over. Yeah. And everybody talks about it, but yet like moves on to it. It's like, I think that's really tough too, like trying to be creative when knowing there's like fires in Maui right now, you know, there's like things like that. Like I remember, I'll never forget, and this happens even on a social level, like I'll never forget this. I've told this story to friends before, how they were like, you know, outside of like commercial arts, like I remember when all the peaceful protests were going down and the COVID and COVID summer one, and I remember like a lot of like just, I mean, there was a lot of like police brutality stuff going on. There was a lot of like riots. There was like there was a lot of clash, a lot of tension, and I remember feeling like in that moment I should be out there doing something for this with my work. Like I should be contributing to like the NAACP, or I should be giving to like some of these local nonprofits. And I actually did. I lended myself and helped out with a few. But I remember having that sort of like moment, and I'm having that moment again when I'm like kind of like watching the environment where I'm like, what can I do with this that can like, I don't know, like outside of just like, you know, painting visual ideas for these brands or whatever, like is there something that can help inspire or encourage or try to like change maybe even to some of these, like I know we're past the mark, but it's also like what can we do to even preserve, like what can we even do right now to try to like, I don't know, have hope, and then also move into a way where we can maybe reverse it in some weird way. I don't know. I mean, I'm trying to be a hopeful person, but it's a wild time. And I want to like start pushing my design in that direction to some extent, like in a larger format, but then also outside of, I think, like branding too. I want to try to make some sort of time with that. And maybe that's personal work. Maybe it's not for a client directly, you know what I mean? But
seems like you have more passion in that. Whenever money is involved, then it takes out the passion. So
it's just hard to make time for it, brother. Like it's like so expensive living here. I feel like I'm like constantly going from like one thing to another, and like in terms of like me filling time to let alone play music anymore. I mean, that's never happening. I'm like filling my boat with like all this stuff to pay the bills, keep the studio lights on with all my other, you know, like homies, and then going home at the end of the day and, you know, seeing the girlfriend. And it's just like, yeah, I don't know. I'd like to kind of cut out some of that time, maybe for more personal work, to put that out there. You know what I mean? I've had some friends do that, and they say it's like so rewarding. It's actually giving them fuel for the other projects too, because they're getting to do this sort of like, I don't know. I think you can instill a lot of that in a lot of work, but it's just, there's something else about
there's obviously
doing that kind of work too.
There's obviously value in what you do. Do you feel bad? Do you feel selfish in charging more for what you do?
Do I feel bad for charging more? I don't. I feel like I recognize the value of what I'm doing. When you start seeing too, like people, you know, scaling their business to like multi-million-dollar sort of like concepts, it's like, and you see what little part that played into it. Or they even share the numbers with you. They're like, hey, we just like made 50% like more profit than we did in this quarter. It's like, okay, like this, and I need to be charging a little bit more in this, because you know what I mean, like this, it's been really redefinitive. And then also knowing too, when you like, I think go up against, Austin's such a small town. It gets really weird when you start going into like a lot of these like bid wars with like your other homies. You know what I mean? It's like, this is so awkward. Are you bidding on this too? Oh, and a lot of times when it happens at the studio, I'm just kind of like, I don't even try to do anything where I'm like, I don't try to bid against my studio mates or anything like that. That's a big reason why, like with like Lauren or anybody else that's in the shop, I'm like, hey, you just want to tag team it? Because we already have that creative alignment. We already do this. So like, let's just go in it together. Yeah. And I love doing collaborative efforts anyway, because there's a better, I feel pushed and I learn more from those experiences. Yes. So I'm not trying to do this army of one kind of thing anymore with anything. Oh, thank you, man. Yeah, I don't know. I think like, I think there's like a lot of value in terms of like building this stuff, and when you're taking the attention to just not be templative or formulaic, like you know what they want, but you don't want to just give them an answer and get paid. Like I really have a hard time letting go of small and big projects, because I just want it when it goes out there to like literally make some difference in stopping someone and being like, what is that all about? Making them laugh, or making them be like, what is this? Well, I don't get it. You know what I mean? And like challenging expectations, I guess, or what people are used to seeing. And all that work that I like inspires me is outside of, most of the time it's outside of Austin. Like, I mean, I look at like stuff from like Berlin or like Toronto or like, you know, Southeast Asia, you know what I mean? It's always stuff that I'm like, oh, weird, their perception of this is so interesting. Thank you. Yep. And And yeah, I'm trying to sort of like challenge the aesthetics of that, and which in doing so kind of creates more distinction for your work. It's funny that you said it because like earlier you're saying like going through the work, because like a lot of times when someone talks about going through work, I can't recognize that it's me, but other people will be like when they see the work, they're like, oh, I knew it was you when I saw it, and I'm like, man, thank you, because that's really what I want, is a recognizable, I don't want to say aesthetic or style, but something that exudes like, oh, that was definitely a Keith thing right there. You know what I mean? That's like really fun, and that makes me happy to know that there's something there that's like a piece of me going in there, you know.
If somebody wanted to collaborate with you, how would they go about doing that?
Well, we'll have a nice new fancy website for them to reach out on. I say it with inquiries. They can just sort of reach out to me at like keith@keithdavisyoung.com.
Is your work showcased there too?
No, not the design work, but that photo work was like kind of the standstill. I've left it really sort of like on social media and this other site called Dribble that's sort of had its heyday, but it's more shopped around with other agencies.
Shout it out. I went all the way through it.
You did?
It's a bunch of images. I love it.
Yeah, thank you, man. Yeah, Dribble with 3 B's, dribble.com, Keith Davis Young. And then there's like, obviously my Instagram, Keith Davis Young. I feel like my Instagram is like really, I'm trying to really treat that not so much. I mean, I really treat that as a tool for work. I try not to like throw a lot of emotions into social media like a lot of us are.
It's hard.
Because it's a weird world, right? Especially when you're doing something creative, like you get into that head game of comparing yourself to so many others, and I'm just going to use this and show glimpses of my life and what I'm doing, and then just like I'm going to be over here.
Your competition is yourself. It's not somebody else.
Right, exactly. Yeah, but yeah, and then I have I'm in a studio over at Canopy. Of like it's about like 8 people in there. We have a project manager that's been really helping out, and it's slowly kind of becoming this sort of like collective effort. I still have people that reach out that specifically want me. If the budget's only allotted just for me to work on it, that's one thing. If it's larger in scope, usually I'll bring in some of my studio mates. That project in Paris, Texas I was talking about earlier has been really interesting because they started off buying up all these like beach houses in Gulf Shores and then like building identity. They wanted me to build naming and branding for each space, much like Liz does with all her restaurant or her hotel concepts. And they just wanted to do it for small beach houses. And then their hometown of Paris, Texas, they're like, we just bought a mid-century modern bank. We're going to turn this into a hotel. And it's like, amazing. And these mini McMansions. And they're like, okay, Keith, we want you to like create the naming and this and this. And that was just so exciting to walk through these. I have to show you photos. I don't know if you saw any of them, but like walking through these hallways that haven't been touched by time since the 1920s. And these old mansions with like just the railing, like the most immaculate. You will geek out when I show you guys when we're done recording. I want to show you some photos. But it was just like, nobody had touched it. I've never been to a small town where like things have been preserved so like immaculately, and it was really inspiring to be like, man, I get to like be a part of preserving something here. I think that really like hit some notes of like, I don't know, just being really humbled and honored to be a part of something like that. You know what I mean? Instead of just like a new concept, new build, and it's this, which I don't mind. I still love doing that. The other project that I'm really excited about is something that's about to launch in San Antonio too, which actually is a brewery. And it's called Idol. And one example of this, we've been working with a good friend of mine that had moved from LA. His name's Peter Stanislaus, works for a company called Pouring with Heart. And we've worked on a slew of projects together. He's also done like King Bee here in town. I worked with him on Stay Put. But there was a brewery that I worked on with my studio mate Jacob Stutz and my other studio mate Lauren Dickens and our project manager Heather. We had all worked on it to where it was like this old 1920s car showroom, has no name. They're like, we just want to put a brewery in here. It's downtown in the Riverwalk in San Antonio. And so we got in there and we started the naming process, and we called it Idle, IDLE with and Lauren had really like come like nailed down the naming on that with like this kind of anthem to it, say like slow down, you know what I mean? Just like this idea of like slowing down and have a beer, and like, but still like tying in the kind of conceptual sort of ethos of what this was before. And it's just honestly, wait till you see the brewery, because it's honestly something that we can't stop talking about in the studio, because aesthetically it's like it checks every box, down from like vacuum form signage to like hyper minimal, almost Mexico City, like bright colors, but then like scale back and really like minimalist and like crispy and cool and chill. Like inside, like the ambiance is just so. We worked with Lillian Steckel, also interior designer, on the project, and Alice Clark, and this guy also Tom. That's like a really good friend of ours, and Tom Have is also their GC on staff, and it just became this project that everybody's like, man, I can't wait for this thing to go live and it has a pulse, because it's like it really outshines like so much what we've seen in Central Texas. Like, this place does not belong here, but when you see it, it's so special. And I think it's going to set a tone for us, where we're going to probably, as Austin keeps growing and concepts get harder to really launch here because it's so expensive, more projects are going to kind of show their face from San Marcos. I think we're going to see more of that, and I'm sure.
When do they launch? When do they?
It's going to be this summer. It's September. I would love for y'all to come down and check it out. I'll be there first week of September, because we're going to be like taking video and photographing the work. But it's really like,
you can record me drinking a beer there.
I will. I'll be like, this is Mark on his 10th beer. We gotta wheel him out of here now.
All right, so KeithDavisYoung.com if you want to see your work, right? And then Dribble.
Yeah, I would go for the design work. I'd go to Instagram. I mean, the KeithDavisYoung.com is going to be, I'd say, like 3 months. That new site's going to be hitting like the public eye, and then I'm also rolling out with my studio mates sort of a collective like agency-esque sort of like body of work around the same time, and that's underneath the name Projector, and that's what I have with Lauren and Jacob and Heather and that whole crew.
That. Cool.
Yeah, we've been kind of working on this for a while. We just want to kind of like, we built so many case studies with so much work that we have and that we've done together collaboratively, like everything from like stuff for Graham Parsons to like 365 Things Austin to like that brewery Idol to all these other bar concepts, and we don't really have a home for it because everybody kind of had a piece in it. So we're like, let's take this and make it a collective effort, and now we can kind of like, I think, get in those circles of like what agencies actually charge. And when clients come to us, they can know that they're working with the 8 of us and not floating the overhead of 300 people. I mean, I'm not trying to call anybody out, but like, I think there's something that happened after COVID where obviously more creatives started working from home, but then also there was some horse blinders that got taken off where people were like, where's my money actually going? Like, what am I actually, where is this really, like, who are you paying? And what is my return investment here? You know what I mean? And I think for us, it's like, we take a lot of pride in sort of like washing away what that is and showing like, hey, you're actually going to get very high caliber work, an entire brand system.
Certainly
here.
The talent is there, yeah.
Man, and we just like, I don't know, it's funny, we really juggle so many projects, but you know, like we were just talking about Italy before this. You know, I just got back from Italy a couple weeks ago. We're still making that time to refill refill ourselves. Like, I think when you stay this busy, it's just like, it's just a must. It's like, well, I'm not going to just sit here and work through the whole summer. I'm going to like divvy up my day to day and be like, all right, like I'm going to Carmel at the end of the month, like I was telling you. And I've been to Big Sur. I haven't really been in that pocket, but I'm just going to sit on the beach and probably surf a little bit and, you know, kind of reflect on work. When I do that, it resets me. When I come back to this, it's just like, man, like, I don't know. It just streamlines it in some weird way. You know?
Pays it out.
It does, yeah, most definitely.
Well, Keith, I love your energy. I really do.
Thank you, brother.
I really enjoyed our conversation.
Yeah, me too.
I want to keep in touch with you. I want to keep following what you're doing and promoting that. I think it's awesome. I think what you're doing is great.
Well, I appreciate you guys like bringing me on because I know like I'm not the typical like person that's in your sort of circles, and I have a huge amount of respect for the work that you guys do. It's like one of those things where when I meet people like yourselves and I know what you do, I'm always like, damn, should I have done that in like a past life?
No.
I said to my chef friends, I was like, this sounds so interesting. Like the way you were describing it, I'm like, man, I kind of like that. It kind of does that to you where you're like,
you're exactly where you need to be.
I agree.
I appreciate that. But I have a massive respect for it. The what? Say it? It's so funny, right? It's that restlessness, man. I think it's like, I think everybody does this. I say this to my chef friends. I'm like, man, like they'll talk about like even like blood, sweat, and tears going into like a dish. And they're not even able to preserve it. It's not like that thing's going to live on or be like sitting out there. And I'm like, how do you do that? Because like, I feel like visual artists are people like us that need something tangible. It's like, you kind of, there's like maybe this subconscious part of you that's like, oh, I need something that lives on that I knew will outlive me and I'll be there forever. And like, for them, they're just like, on to the next. Yeah. Like, that's so like, c'est la vie, and so like, that healthy, like I feel like non-attachment thing is like, but I know chefs are also, like a lot of people in that industry, I mean, they are a breed of their own and they have a different way around that. But the creative aspect of just like be removed from that is so healthy and cool to me. You know what I mean? And I think about that with like a lot of different like medium, like works of, creativity, like what you guys do. And, down to even like musicians, it's like, I don't know. But I'm fed by all that. Like, and I honestly, as I get older, we were talking this earlier in terms of tightening circles. I most of the time really just want to hang with creative people because I'm not a small talker. Anybody who knows me, I'm even through this conversation, I have a lot of energy, but I'm also I do not want to talk about the weather, and I don't want to just be like, I don't want to just be like, oh, blah, 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 just like going through like the notions. Like I really want to get in there and deep, and when I get to talk about creativity on that level, it's just like, it inspires me on that level when I get to like hear from other people that like definitely identify with that. It makes you feel not alone. You're like, yeah, you feel that too? Yeah, what is that all about? It's a good feeling.
Dude, awesome. I really appreciate your time.
Yeah, buddy.
Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thank you.
I want to get you back on some point in the future.
Let's do it. Yeah,
let's do it again.
Love
Keith,
it.
thanks for coming on.
Thank you, brother. Thank you all. Cheers, y'all. Yeah, Cheers. Absolutely. Enjoyed it.
We hope you enjoyed this discussion. For more information on upcoming episodes, follow us on Instagram. We want to hear from you, so leave us some feedback to help us shape future episodes.